Sand whispered under hooves, sharp and hurried, echoing off the canyon walls. A figure stumbled ahead, bare feet bloodied, hair tangled with dust, the loose folds of a torn buckskin dress dragging like chains behind her. 3 riders thundered after, rifles glinting in the dying light. The woman darted toward the low ridge where a wagon stood still, a mule stamping restless at its harness. Beside it, a widow in black calico gripped the handle of her water bucket. Her breath caught, because the hunted woman's eyes locked on hers, wide, desperate, unblinking. "Help me," the eyes said without words. The riders closed in, their shouts cutting the air. "There! Don't let her slip." Dust rose in golden sheets around them. The widow did not think. She hurled the bucket aside, reached beneath the wagon bench, and pulled free her husband's old rifle. The metal was cold, but her palms were steady. The Apache woman collapsed at her feet. Just as the first rider swung his rifle up, the widow raised hers quicker. The crack split the desert silence. One horse screamed and toppled, throwing its rider in a tumble of dirt. The other 2 yanked reins, their silhouettes dark against the sinking sun. One spat, "Woman, you're in over your head. Hand her back, and we'll ride off." The widow chambered another round. Her black veil fluttered in the wind, but her stance was rooted as stone. "Best keep riding," she said low, almost to herself. The Apache woman tugged weakly at her skirt, whispering words in a tongue the widow did not know. Her hands shook as she pointed, beyond the ridge, deeper into the Badlands. The message was clear. They could not stay. A rifle cracked. Stone burst near the wagon's wheel. The widow fired back, the kick jolting her shoulder. One rider wheeled away. The other pressed forward, pistol raised, shouting curses. "Up!" The widow barked, seizing the Apache woman's arm. She dragged her to the wagon, heaved her onto the seat, and lashed the reins. The mule shrieked, bolted, wheels groaning across uneven rock. Gunfire chased them. Bullets tore splinters from the wagon's side. The widow crouched low, forcing the mule faster, faster, through gullies and dry washes where shadows pooled like traps. The Apache woman clutched the seat, body trembling, but her gaze remained sharp, scanning the ridges. She tapped the widow's arm and pointed again, left, through a narrow cut in the rock. The widow jerked the reins, barely squeezing the wagon through. Behind, the rider's hooves thundered still. The canyon amplified every sound, turning pursuit into a storm. The mule stumbled, nearly pitched them both forward. The widow steadied it, breath ragged. She risked one glance at her passenger. The woman's lips pressed tight, eyes fierce despite the blood streaking her cheek. Something in that look struck the widow, something unbroken, unyielding. The canyon opened to a dry riverbed. Moonlight was creeping in now, silvering the stones. The widow pulled the wagon into the shadows of a cottonwood grove and yanked the mule to a halt. Silence dropped heavy, broken only by the animal's labored snorts. The Apache woman slid down, knees buckling. She pressed a hand to her side, darkness seeping through torn cloth. The widow caught her before she crumpled, guiding her to the shelter of the tree roots. A whistle echoed faint from the cliffs. Then another, closer. The riders had not lost them. The widow's chest tightened. Her rifle held only a few rounds. She listened, boots on gravel, horses pushing through brush. They were spreading out. The Apache woman's hand caught hers, strong despite weakness. She murmured something low, then pressed a small, carved token into the widow's palm. It was shaped like a hawk, smooth from many hands. The widow didn't understand its meaning, but she felt its weight like a vow. Branches snapped nearby. A shadow moved between boulders. The widow raised her rifle again, breath slow, finger tightening. The desert held its breath. Then gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes stinging the dark. The widow ducked, fired back, sparks scattering rock. The Apache woman pulled herself upright, bracing against a tree, eyes blazing as though urging the widow not to falter. The fight was not finished. It had only begun. And in the cold desert night, beneath a sky split by gunfire and stars, the tale of their rescue was being carved. The kind men would whisper in saloons, long after the blood dried in the sand. Rifles cracked in the dark. Sparks lit the canyon wall. The widow fired back. Teeth clenched, muzzle flash burning her veil white for an instant. Horses screamed, men shouted, bullets hissed past. The Apache woman pressed against a tree, blood dark on her side, yet her gaze never broke. She pointed up the ridge where shadows shifted. The widow moved. She crawled through gravel, rifle gripped tight. She rose sudden, fired. One rider toppled backward, his body tumbling into dry riverbed. Another curse split the night. They pressed harder now. Hooves pounded above, rocks showering down. The widow slid behind a boulder, chambering her last round. Sweat stung her eyes. Her hands did not tremble. She drew, aimed, fired. One rider spun from the saddle. The last man howled and charged, pistol blazing. The widow ducked, stone chips cutting her cheek. She snatched the Apache woman by the arm, dragging her deeper into the canyon. Their breath rasped against the silence between gunfire. The man's voice bellowed after them. "You can't hide. That squaw is worth more than your life." The widow froze, chest heaving. Her jaw clenched tight. Then her voice, low and steady, answered the dark. "You'll choke on that price." She raised the empty rifle like a staff. The Apache woman's hand gripped her wrist. She pressed something small, hard, cold into her palm, a knife hidden beneath her torn dress. The widow turned just as the rider burst through brush. His pistol rose. She lunged. The knife flashed once. His scream tore the canyon wide. The horse reared, bolted, leaving him broken in the dust. Silence fell, broken only by the riverbed wind. The widow dropped to her knees. Her chest heaved. She stared at her blood-stained hands, the knife glinting pale in moonlight. The Apache woman reached, took her face between trembling palms, whispering words the widow did not know, but the meaning struck deep. Strength, courage, sister. Dawn broke slow. The desert turned gold. Smoke curled in the far horizon, the town waiting restless. The Apache woman nodded toward it, her face stern. The widow knew their fight was not finished. By noon they entered the dusty street. Doors creaked shut. Men stepped aside. The widow walked steady, rifle at her back, the Apache woman at her side, ragged yet unbent. At the saloon porch, the Baron stood. Black coat, silver spurs, eyes narrow. His men lined the rail, rifles loose in their hands. He spoke slow with a sneer. "So the widow still carries her dead husband's gun. Thought you'd buried that part of yourself." The widow's gaze was steady. The Apache woman's grip tightened on her arm. The Baron's voice grew sharp. "She belongs to me. Hand her over, or you'll join your husband in the dirt." The town hushed. The widow's veil lifted in the breeze. Her voice carried, even and hard. "I buried my husband, but not my aim." The draw was faster than eyes could follow. Her rifle cracked, echoing like thunder off canyon walls. One man dropped. Another stumbled back, clutching his chest. Chaos split the street. Men fired. Townsfolk screamed. Horses reared. The widow moved like she had never laid the gun down. Each shot clean, deliberate. The Apache woman darted low, flung stones, pulled rifles from fallen hands. They fought as one, dust storming around them. The Baron roared, raised his pistol, fired. The shot ripped the widow's sleeve, seared her skin. She staggered but stood. Her rifle came level. For a moment, all sound stilled. Her eyes narrowed. The Baron laughed. "You won't do it. You're just a grieving woman hiding in black." The widow's shot cut his words. He fell, sprawled in the dust. His pistol slid silent into shadow. The silence after was heavy, almost holy. The townsfolk crept from their doors, eyes wide, whispers rising. The widow lowered her rifle, shoulders heavy. The Apache woman stepped forward. She raised the carved hawk high, its shadow falling across the dirt where blood still smoked. She spoke clear in her tongue, and though few understood, the meaning rang through. The widow was no longer alone. Stories say the sun dipped red that evening, like fire bowing to earth. Stories say the widow laid down her veil, and with it the years of silence. And stories say the Apache woman's gift was not the knife nor the hawk, but something greater, the return of a woman's own spirit, fierce and unbroken, made legend in the dust of sundown,